everybody and welcome back to Aiche. My name is Hannah and I am coming to the end of my journey in Toronto in Canada, and I just thought I would do a little bit of a retrospect and comparison between Toronto and London. I have spent the last 4 months in Toronto on a semester exchange, and last year I had a whole year in London at university doing media, so I just thought it would be interesting to take a look back at the last 4 months and last year to sort of compare and contrast the two cities in a way. So if you are thinking of going to Toronto, be sure to watch this video, and if you're from Toronto, let me know what you think. Let me know if my takes are good or bad. So let's get into it. So I wanted to start off with the sort of general environment of Toronto and Canada and the weather. It's kind of similar, I guess, to the UK. At the start, in September, October time, I was very surprised by how sunny it was. And it was actually probably a lot more sunny here than it was in London at a similar time. And just the UK in general, it's very bleak, very dark, very rainy. But here, especially in the summer months, I guess September, October still counts as summer months. I think their winter is a little bit later than our winter. So sort of like January, February time is sort of more winter, whereas we get a bit colder earlier in the UK. So the sort of different weather is, they do have very similar weather, I guess. Recently, last week, it snowed, which was really nice. I was really looking forward to it snowing. I didn't bring any snow boots or anything like that, and it wasn't bad. Toronto is really good at making sure that the paths are clear and things like that. We have lots of the salt gets put on the paths and things. The transport still worked even though it was snowing, so that was good. And I think London's kind of the same, where if it does snow, it's people are walking all the time in their area, so it's not really that much of a problem. But it's just nice to see. I didn't see much snow last year. I think there was a little bit, but I think it was more February time. There was actually a nice bit of snow that came here, which was nice, because in the UK, we don't get snow at all. I think in other parts of Canada, of course, Canada is a massive, massive country, so you get more snow, which is interesting. One thing that did annoy me a little bit about the environment is it is very Americanized in a way. Obviously, Canada and America, the US, are quite new countries compared to European countries. So I found the roads to be quite boring in a way. They're very grid-like. So one whole road will go from one side of the city all the way to the other side of the city, which is fine. I don't, there's nothing wrong with that. I just found it quite uninteresting, if that's probably the better word. In London, you can go around tiny little streets and find cute places and things like that. It's very historic, I think. But this is kind of comparing Europe to America in general. European cities tend to be quite historic, I think, because I don't want to call them beautiful, but they are, absolutely are. But Toronto is beautiful in a different way, in a more modern sense. The buildings are very just skyscrapers and normal houses and things like that. There aren't many interesting sort of historic buildings as there are in London per se. I really do like the architecture of Europe, and I think that might just be a me thing. Places like Rome, for example, the architecture is so incredible, it's so interesting, and you can go down these little roads and find new places. But here, it's all very samey. You go down one road and there's some shops, you go down another road, there's some shops, and they're all very similar shops. I think the buildings are all quite similar, and there's kind of the modern sort of city style, I guess, that you think of. So yeah, and but there is also, of course, you could go to the seaside and there's beaches and things, which I thought was really interesting and really cool. And, you wouldn't go, there's a probably good job that there isn't seasides near the Thames, because it is awful. And I think the actual scenery, that when you look out onto the waves, onto the ocean, it's amazing. It really is lovely. And it's something that you do not get in London at all. There isn't a seaside in London like there is here. And it's actually really cool to have a city by the sea. I don't know whether it counts as a sea. I need to kind of look at what it is. Being able to go up against the ocean and to look out, and it's a really nice place to do some studying and stuff like that. And that is something that we just can't replicate in London. The areas in the city seem very similar. I already kind of mentioned this. There are a lot of homeless people here, and you do notice it more than in London. I'm not sure why. The homeless population here, you can just walk down the street and there's going to be at least one person who is homeless, and there are lots of parks where there are tents and things, and like whole communities of like homeless people. In London, I have not seen any of that. Maybe I just haven't been in the areas where that is. Obviously, London is a massive place. And sort of the more touristy bits aren't like that. But here, it is literally everywhere. Outside the Royal Ontario Museum, there was a whole sort of community there. And I'm not sure whether this is something that like means that they don't have as many places for these people to go, or it's just not handled as well, or something like that. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just ignorant. I'm not sure. But yeah, there is lots more homeless people around. But it's also worth mentioning that weed is available here and it is not legal in the UK. There are so many places where you can go and buy it. And obviously there are a lot of people walking along the streets who have clearly taken it. And it's quite obvious. So if that's something that like worries you, I wouldn't say it's a problem. Like most people don't. I actually think the smoking here is a lot less than it is in London. London stinks. London smells of smoke all the time, and so many people smoke and so many people vape, and that's what I found at uni, especially in London. I'm going to talk about it later, but the kids there vape and smoke a lot more than the kids here. I haven't really seen many people vaping, which is quite interesting because it's something that a lot of young people do, especially in London and in the UK in general. I think most universities in the UK will have just kids outside smoking or vaping on their like break during a lecture, you know, but I don't see anyone really here smoking or vaping like outside of like classes, which is really interesting. Obviously weed is still available and legal, so there is that. So there's always like one or two people on the train just outside walking about. There's clearly on something, but it's never really been an issue. They've never really come up to me and like made me feel uncomfortable. It's not been that much of an issue. I think in terms of the people here, they're a lot more friendly. I feel safer, I think. Not that I've ever felt unsafe in London, but maybe just the whole like environment here feels a little bit safer. People don't seem to be out to get you. I don't know what that means. But then again, I haven't really been outside in the dark here, really. I used to come back at 9 o'clock in the evenings from one of my classes, and that was about 40 minutes on the the subway, the TTC, and that has never been a problem for me, and I've never felt unsafe. And yeah, there are lots of parks, there's lots of like woody places, there's lots of forests and national reserves that are not in the centre, really, not in Toronto, but if you go a little bit further out, you can go and find them, which is nice. And again, in London, you have Hyde Park, and you have sort of little squares everywhere. London also has a lot of really nice places to go to. I wouldn't say there are any nice, like, foresty bits, but if you want to go for a picnic in Hyde Park, that's nice. Although don't sit on the hammocks. The security will come and get you and tell you to pay a tenner or however much it is to sit on a hammock. It's ridiculous. In terms of the wildlife that I've seen, I haven't seen much. Obviously, I am in the city, and there are bears, I assume, in Canada around. And there's moose and things like that are obviously more interesting wildlife that I haven't seen. But I've seen a lot of squirrels, and they're black squirrels, which I thought that was really cool. And I have seen a kingfisher. When I went to Niagara, I saw a kingfisher, which was really cool. So that was nice. And then, of course, like the London wildlife was not as much. we get squirrels, we get foxes. I've seen foxes in London, which has been really nice, but I haven't seen any foxes here. So obviously it is a city, so sort of more interesting wildlife wouldn't really be in the city. So transport, the TTC versus the London Underground. The TTC is the Toronto Transit Commission, and when we talk about the subway service, it is fine. It has 3 lines, or more or less just 2 lines. There's one that goes side to side, one that goes up and down, and then there's another little one that has like 4 stops on it. So there's not much in terms of like trains, but they're good. They're always on time, which is great, and it does go to more or less anywhere in the city. So for me, I take the number 2 line, which is the side to side line, and then I take the number 1 line, which is the up and downy line, and it takes me about 40 minutes, well, not even 40 minutes, like half an hour to get to university from where I am. I do live right next to the station, but yeah, it doesn't take me long at all to get where I need to go. Compare that to the Underground, which is the most unreliable service ever, which is obviously on par for UK trains. They are never on time. Trains in the UK are not great. Never rely on a train in the UK to get you somewhere on time. And having said that though, you can get anywhere on the Underground, and it is better than taking a bus or a tram. I believe there are trams in London, I haven't found them. And here we have streetcars and buses, which are so much more reliable. The traffic here is so much better. Like there's no traffic, there's almost no traffic. It's a lot easier to drive in the city because of how big their roads are. They're so much bigger, and of course they're side to side, up and down. It's a grid, so it's so much easier to get around. And I would much rather drive here than I would in London, because driving in London, that would drive me insane. I can't imagine the taxi drivers driving in London. And also, of course, there's the ULEZ charge that you have to pay if you own a petrol car or a diesel car. Unless you have an electric car, then you have to pay, I don't know how much it is per day just to drive your car. So obviously there's that. And here it's free. So, but I think that's also kind of a thing with the sort of Americanization of Canada. Then when they became countries, they kind of were built for cars rather than for public transport, which you can argue the pros and cons of that. But at the end of the day, it is so much easier to get around here on public transport and by car than it is in London, I think, because of how much more reliable it is. And even like the trams, they call them streetcars, but the streetcars are so much more reliable than any tram that I've ever been on, and I really don't like trams. I also really hate buses. The buses here are not quite as busy as the buses in London. They can be horrendously busy. I have been on some buses in London that I feel the claustrophobia is not good. And the buses here, again, the claustrophobia is not great, but it is significantly better than it is in London. But I wouldn't recommend taking a bus. I hate buses. If you can drive, I would drive here. Like, that would be the ideal way to get around. And then there's also like bicycles. You can hire bikes as you can in London. I don't see many people using them. Most people have electric bikes, which is really cool. I wish I had one, and you can take it on the TTC with you. So yeah, there's lots of ways to get around, and walking is really easy as well. You don't tend to get lost because of how like it's forward, it's left, right, left, whatever. As long as you like retrace your steps, you can find where you were before. In London, I find it really hard to do that just because of how like curvy the roads are, but the roads are more interesting. So you weigh it up. Entertainment, bars and clubs. I have not been to many bars and clubs. I went to one bar and it was a really nice bar, and the drinks were a reasonable price, I think. I can't really remember how much they were. It was all the way back in September. I feel like they were similar prices to the UK prices. Maybe not London prices, but like UK in general prices. But I haven't been to any clubs either. I imagine they're very similar. But from what I've heard from my classmates, they don't tend to do clubs. They will go to people's houses for like a house party. And in the UK, we just don't really do that. Maybe you do like prees and then you go out for a club, but you probably wouldn't go to a house party, which I thought was very interesting and a very American thing for them to do. And so maybe that tells to me that the clubs aren't great. But then again, I'm not a clubbing person, so I can't really say. The pubs here are very similar to the pubs in the UK. There are pubs like based on like Irish pubs, and there's also like British pubs. There's a pub at the road called the Firkin pub, and it's like in a little underground sign, and that's cool. It's very similar to the pubs in the UK. Me and my mum went to a nice pub, and there was no one in there. It was like midday. There was no one in there at all. The prices were fine. You do have to pay tip. We'll get on to the costs in a bit. But yeah, so the pubs, very similar. I will say I prefer British pubs just because there's usually a lot more busy, and I like that. I mean, sometimes I like a nice quiet drink, but I quite like the abundance of people. It makes it feel more cozy and more, I don't know, like people enjoy it. But that's just me. The pubs are very similar though. So there's also, of course, there is lots of entertainment around. You can go to the CN Tower, Niagara Falls, the Royal Ontario Museum, the art gallery. There is the theme park that's just outside. Oh, Canada's Wonderland, that's what it's called. I didn't manage to go there, but I love theme parks, so that's interesting. And then there's lots of like shopping places as well. And then to sort of combat that, of course, London has the London Eye, there's Westminster Abbey, there's loads of museums, there's Big Ben, loads of shopping as well. So I guess, in my personal opinion, I think the entertainment in London is better. It's so much more expensive. It is, absolutely. But there are so many different places in London where you can go and you can get totally different vibes from every single place. The stuff here is very similar, especially in terms of shopping. Like every shopping centre has the same shops. If you wanted to go to a different shopping centre, there wouldn't be much point. You know, they have very similar shops. And the museum here was not free, but the museums in London, I believe, are free, or they used to be free. So that's something. And there's so many galleries in London. There's the art gallery here. I'm sure there are some smaller galleries as well, but I've not really heard of them. And I didn't manage to go in any of them. Having said that, the ROM was great. I loved it. It was really nice. We spent a whole 3-4 hours in there, which was really good. I love museums. Niagara Falls was amazing. You should go. If you ever get the chance to go to Canada or go to Toronto, go to this area, go to Ontario or go to New York, make sure you go to Niagara Falls because they are amazing. And it is really a spectacle. But also, it's very much like Blackpool. The city that's nearby is very much Blackpoolized. It's so weird. There is lots of little attraction-y places. There's a wax museum. There's a Dracula house and haunted houses and things like that and arcades. It's so weird. But it's kind of cool. So it's so weird because you have the majestic beauty of Niagara Falls contrasted with the weirdness of the actual town. But it's quite interesting. And if you do like Blackpool, then you might like it. I quite like Blackpool in a weird way. So it was quite interesting to me. And it was it's completely different places. Anyway, I digress. Niagara Falls is amazing and beautiful. And if you can manage to go in the nights, I think they put up lights underneath it and things like that, so that's really cool. You can also visit the Americas side if you pay for the visa things or whatever it is you need to pay. I didn't pay that day, but yeah, Niagara Falls is amazing, but obviously that's not in Toronto itself. I will say that I do think the London stuff is better. It's so much more expensive, don't get me wrong, but there's so much stuff to do. Theatres as well, oh my god, go to the theatre in the West End. It's incredible. I love the theatre, and there are theatres here. I don't really know where they are. I think I walked past a couple of them. I didn't really go into any. Of course, there is also the arena, and there is ice hockey if you're into that, if you're into sports. In London, we have football, so if you're into sports, I'm not really into sports. I didn't go to any of them. I'm going to Pitmull concert in February, which I'm looking forward to. But I didn't see Taylor Swift when she came here. I'm not a big Swiftie, so sorry guys. But she did come here for 2 weeks, not that long ago, and it went all crazy. So the entertainment wise, there is a lot of entertainment here. Oh, also you can go underground. There's lots of underground walkways, which I thought was really cool, and we don't have that in London. And you can find just new little shops and things like that. It was really cool. So yeah, the entertainment here is great, but I prefer the entertainment in London personally, just because I like to be able to walk around and find new places easily and things like that. So in terms of food, I found the food to be quite similar. There's basically the same things available as there is in the UK. Canadian food is just the same. I personally think that some of it isn't as good, but that's just me. The eggs, I had one pack of eggs back in September, and the yolks were quite yellow, and I like my yolks to be nice and orange. And they just didn't cook very well when I tried to fry them. Maybe that was just me and the appliances that I was using, but I didn't find the eggs were that good. So I didn't buy them again. In terms of like cafes and things, there are loads of nice little cafes. I haven't seen a cat cafe, which makes me sad. But of course there are loads of nice cafes in London as well. They're very similar. I went to more cafes in London than I have done here, so I can't really comment on that. Same with restaurants. I haven't been to many restaurants here, but the fast food kind of stuff is the same. We have some more sort of American things here. There's a Shake Shack, which is like the new place where I went to with one of my friends the other day, and that was really cool. It's quite a nice food place. It's a bit expensive, but it's nice. So they have similar restaurants, I guess. Indian and like Italian and whatever you want. I guess there's a restaurant for it. I find that there's more sort of fast food places here, I think. Maybe I just haven't found the nice restaurants really, and I didn't really go to any restaurants here. But the fast food here is very similar. There's a McDonald's, there's Starbucks, there's Subway. They also have, of course, Tim Hortons, which is really nice. It's quite cool to experience Tim Hortons. I thought it was like the Greggs of Canada. It's not really. They do more sort of donuts and buns and things and a coffee rather than like the pasties of Greggs. I do prefer Greggs, and I do miss Greggs. Greggs, so good. I miss it so much because of how... And Tim Hortons is also fairly cheap, but Greggs... Oh, it's just a good cheap like lunch meal, and also meal deals. We don't do meal deals in Canada, and it kills me, and I hate it so much. And so getting like lunch here is quite expensive. I think the when you buy food and when you're trying to buy like lunch on your lunch break, it's way more expensive than it would be in London. Like it's twice as much, at least, depending on where you go. If you go to a place that's not like one of the big fast food places, it's not going to be quite as expensive. But when you take into consideration that you got to pay a tip and taxes added after, it kind of builds up. And obviously in the UK, we can go to Tesco and get a £3.50 meal deal, and it's great. It's so good. And I miss that. I was trying to go for lunch here. I would be spending at least twice that amount just to go for like McDonald's or something for lunch. So, and McDonald's is not great anywhere in the world, but it's probably better here, arguably. We also have all-day breakfast here, which is nice, which we don't get in the UK, and I wish they would put that in the UK because that's like the only thing that I would eat. So yeah, I don't know. The food here, personally, I prefer the food in London just because there's a lot of variety, and I feel like a lot more variety, and I haven't actually seen that many sort of cafes and things here. So, yeah. But there's also like the tip culture. You are expected to give a tip of, I think, 20%, 15 to 20%. And I don't mind if they do like a good service, but if it's something like you have to tip at like Starbucks and like places that are just like giving you like fast food places. I don't really know where like Starbucks counts as a fast food place, but like some places like they expect to tip even though it's just a coffee shop. And I don't know, it's not like you're a waiter, and that kind of was like, I don't know, but you're still expected to give a tip, and there's a lot of things that you're expected to give a tip for as well. that I didn't realize. And I personally really don't like the tip culture. I think that you should just pay your workers the amount that they're owed, you know, pay them above minimum wage. So, you know, but that's a kind of a more American thing, and I feel like it's not as much of a big thing in Canada as it is in America. Obviously, in the UK, you're not expected to give a tip every time you buy something. So the next thing we're going to talk about is costs. So kind of, you know, going on from the last section, the tipping culture, of course, in the UK, you know exactly what you're paying for things because the tax is included in the price. And so you can do the maths in your head without having to do extra maths, magic maths that you shouldn't have to do. And I found it really, really annoying at first with the sort of like tax stuff. And I remember going to the shop and like going to the till, and it's like, oh, it's an extra like $2-3, and I'm like, what do you mean? Where did that come from? It's so annoying, and I wish no country would ever do that. Please just have the tax in the price. The tax isn't going to change that much. It's not going to change often enough for you to have it in, like, to do it at the till. I don't know. It's really annoying. And I kind of got used to it eventually, but it is still a really annoying thing that I wish all countries would just put the tax in the price. It'd be so much easier for everyone. Please do that. And then, of course, like the tipping thing, there were things that I didn't realize you had to tip for, but you did. When I have gotten tattoos, they expected a tip, and that surprised me a little bit because it was kind of like, well, don't you add like you're charging how much you think it's worth. You're not charging, you know, expecting a tip, presumably. I mean, that's what I thought, surely. But a lot of them, they do kind of expect a tip. So sometimes you will, like, things like just being at Starbucks, or if you're buying something from someone, sometimes they do expect a tip. And when you're, like, on, like, almost everything, you have to press, like, or tip or no tip, or, you know. So that was kind of annoying that I didn't realize that everything sort of wanted a tip. I would say the price of things is quite similar to London. It's very expensive in both cities. I would actually kind of say that it's more expensive here because of the added tax and the tipping culture. I think that London is a very expensive place, but at least you know what you're paying for. And I think the Canadian economy isn't great right now. I don't really know much about it, but I've seen lots of people like complaining about how prices have skyrocketed. I wouldn't know, but I would say that they are very similar prices, if not a bit more expensive if you count the tax on top and then the tip. Even like when you go to a supermarket, you might be paying tip, but sometimes I feel like I'm paying way more than what I would do in the UK for something. Obviously in the UK we have like Aldi and like can go to a very cheap place, but even the cheap places here don't feel that cheap. So I would say that the cost is slightly more. Maybe rent is less here. I wouldn't really know because I'm doing a homestay, so it's cheaper anyway. And the rent in London is ridiculously expensive for what you get. But I'm very happy with where I am living and how much I'm paying for it. So that's something that can be said. I do think that both cities are extremely expensive to live in. So the general vibes of Toronto is that it's not quite as busy and arguably not quite as vibrant as London. I prefer London in terms of vibes. I actually quite like a nice busy place. If it's not too busy, sometimes when it's too busy and there's like so many people around, I feel very claustrophobic. And sometimes you're like walking behind a slow person and that really annoys me. But I do like it when there's a lot of people and there's a lot of buzz in the air and people are excited and things like that. I feel like that's nice. There's a lot more tourism in London than there is in Toronto. I find that really helps with the vibe, I guess. There's so many I will say there's so many different cultures in both cities. Lots of people from many, many different cultures go to these cities. There's a big Asian population here, which I noticed. which is nice and it's really cool. And there's a really nice Chinatown and everything. Again, in London, there's a Chinatown. There's a cool Asian population there as well. One thing that Canadians, or that I've seen on TikTok, they really don't like foreigners coming into their country. I think they have a bit of an issue with immigrants, and they don't always take to sort of British and European students. I found that was sort of a thing. Nobody ever said that to me, obviously, but I have seen that on TikTok and things like that, where people are saying like, oh, all these like students from other places are taking the jobs of our students and things like that. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily true, but it's a very multicultural place, which is really nice. The people maybe are nicer. They're certainly much more friendly. I wouldn't say nicer. I'm quite an introvert, and I really like to be left alone when I'm just doing what I'm doing. If I'm in the shop, I don't want a shop assistant to come up to me and be like, "Hey, how you doing? What do you want today?" Because I'm just browsing, I'm probably not gonna buy anything. I just want to see. I just want to look around the shop. Is that a problem? I do find that there are a lot of people intervene a bit more in the shops here, which annoys me a little bit. But at the very least, people are a lot more happier and smilier. In London, everyone has a frown on their face. Everyone looks like they're in a rush or in a hurry. And it's, it's very busy and people mind their own business. But I prefer that. I like my own business to be my own. But that's the thing. If you like people coming up to you and asking you, how was your day? Then you might prefer Toronto. But me personally, I like to keep myself to myself and for people to just leave me alone. So I would prefer London in terms of vibes. In terms of events, London has an incredible Christmas market. It's very, very expensive. Don't go. It's so ridiculously expensive. I haven't been personally, but it looks amazing, and I've seen so many incredible TikToks about it, and it does look like a really great experience for you and your family, but I wouldn't recommend going just because of how expensive it is. Here, there aren't as many Christmas things, which I thought was quite weird. There is the Christmas market in the Distillery District that I went to, which is really, really nice. It was also quite expensive, but I assume not as expensive as London would be, and it's nowhere near as big. Like in London, we have they bring in all these like carnival rides and things like that, and I haven't seen any here. So I may, if I do find something, I might put it in editing. I've only experienced Halloween and Christmas really. There was also Thanksgiving in October, I believe, which I didn't do anything for because, in terms of Halloween was really cool here. A lot of houses got dressed up. There were kids around going door to door and things like that. I did hear that there was a whole street that did like a whole Halloween theme. I saw that there was I don't know whether it was a church. I don't think it was a church. Maybe it was a church. I don't know. Someone did get married outside of it. So there was a place where they had loads of really cool Halloween decorations up. Just loads of massive skeletons in the garden and things like that. I don't remember really anything about Halloween in London. I think it was pretty boring, pretty basic. I think maybe some kids will walk around the neighborhood, but obviously it's quite dangerous in London. I wasn't really living on a street where kids would come and knock on doors anyway. So I'm not really sure. Of course, in other areas of the UK, I used to go trick-or-treating. So I'm sure it is a thing. But I mean, I wouldn't really want my kid going around central London anyway. But there are a lot of houses in central Toronto, so I think a lot of kids will have gone there. And on this street in particular, there was houses and shops and things, so I don't know. I think maybe Halloween is better here. I've heard it is even better in the US. So we don't tend to do loads of things for Halloween. I did go to a club on Halloween last year, so that was something. I don't really like going to the club. I think most people will have had house parties and things in terms of Halloween. But I would say that the events in London slightly better than the events here. So But I don't know. It depends on your budget, really. Then I also wanted to like talk about my personal uni experience. I do a media course back in London at the University of Westminster, which has been incredible. Last year I met some really amazing people that I'm going to be friends with for life, hopefully. If they don't hate me now. It was really nice going to university in London. And of course you have like the big city around. I was in like a borough of London, so I wasn't in Central, but I was like 20 minutes away from Central on the tube. So it was actually a really, really great place. And I think the friends that I made there were really good friends. And maybe because we were all in the same boats, like no one knows each other. So you kind of have to make friends. I felt like I made friends a lot easier in London than I have here, but again, that might just be because I'm only doing a semester here and everyone here is on their second or third year, so they already have like their friendship groups. So I never really made friends, or no, I made friends, but I didn't like join any friendship groups. I kind of had lots of individual friends that I haven't done an awful lot with. I do a lot more stuff with my friends at home than I do here. But in terms of like the teaching style, it's very different. At Westminster, we only have 3 tasks, usually 3 or 4 like modules because of its media, and we don't have any exams. So I had to do an exam and then I had like 2 big projects that I had to do by the end of the term. And throughout the term, all I had to do in terms of work was just write about the class that I was in. And it was just like take a journal sort of, or do a blog, I think it was, of like what we did every class. But here there was work every single class. I got sent like homework essentially every time, which I thought was quite interesting. But I kind of liked it because it split it all up. And instead of like doing a big project at the end of the semester, we did lots of little projects throughout and sort of not built up to a big project, but was kind of like, and I got told my grades sort of constantly, so I knew if I was on the right track and stuff like that, which was really good. And I actually thought that it was a lot better than doing everything at the end in like at home. But at the same time, I really like doing big projects, and I didn't feel like I did any big projects here. A lot of the stuff that we did here is sort of to get you ready to do a bigger project. So we didn't actually do any of those big projects, which I thought was quite interesting. In terms of the sort of modules that I got to do 4 modules here. I got to do production management, games design, interactive storytelling, and directing and performance, which were really great, and they were stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do at home. I'm really glad that I managed to do sort of the games design aspects, because I wasn't managed to do any of that at home, which was really nice. And sort of the stuff that I would have done at home would have been installation stuff, which I'm not that interested in, to be honest. So I thought that the modules that I chose here were a lot better than the choices that I could have had at Westminster. There was that kind of aspect to it. And so I really liked TMU. I thought it's a great university. I thought the people are great. It's very big. Also, University of Westminster is also very big. The people are great. The facilities are great. Facilities are here are great. It's, if you're going to university, it's going to be good. If you choose a good university, it's going to be good. And especially when you go to these sort of big cities, I think that these universities are particularly good. I think TMU is a really, really nice university and a really good university for media. From what I've heard, it's like the best media school in Toronto. And I would say Westminster is one of, if not the best media school in Westminster, if I do say so. It's a great school, and uni here has been really great. It's a very similar experience. I had to do an exam here, which I didn't have to do at home. I'm not complaining too much. It wasn't a hard exam. So my final thoughts. I would say if you have the opportunity to take a semester abroad, or you want to take a year abroad, I would do it. I felt a little bit homesick a lot while I've been here. But at the same time, it has been a really great experience. And if you're more of an extrovert than I am, you probably will make better friends or more friends. It's really nice to see a different culture and a different place and be in a different place. And I've not really traveled so much throughout my life in terms of like going abroad. I've only very recently, when turning an adult, been able to do these things. So if you've never really had the opportunity to do so, I would absolutely take on the opportunity. I got the Turing grant to go, which I'm sure most universities will give you. So you get a little bit of extra money. And then also on top of that, you also get your student loan. So you do get money to be able to do these things. And they want you to do these things and to get this, get those experiences from other places. And I would definitely recommend it if you can. The reason why I chose Canada over other places was because I wanted to go somewhere English speaking. I just thought I would be able to connect with other students a bit better if I could, know what they were saying. Which, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit closed-minded of myself. My boyfriend has gone to Japan, and some of his classes are a little bit difficult because obviously his teachers speak in sort of broken English, so it can be quite hard to understand what they're saying. Having said that, Japan is an incredible place. Go to Japan. But yeah, I would recommend going to Toronto, even if it is just like for a holiday. I maybe wouldn't live here, just because I don't think I can get used to the like tax thing, and it's just not home to me. And I would prefer to be in the UK. I know a lot of people really hate the UK, but I really miss it. So you don't really realise how much you miss home until you leave it. So there you go. There's lots of things to do, and you can make lots of friends here. So I would definitely recommend taking a semester if you can, if you want to anywhere, really. Anywhere you've never been before. That would be really nice, and it is a really great experience and very rewarding. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Sorry it's been a long one. I am now at home by the time that you're watching this video, so my next video will be filmed at home, so that's good. We'll have less of this kind of boring background. So my next video is going to be a big video. It's going to be a video on pantomime. So if you're interested in the British culture of pantomime, then stick around for that. And if you did enjoy the video, like and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.